topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, glad you could join us. Bill Martinez here with John Hart from Open the Books. It's time to, for the whole truth and nothing but, John Hart. What do you say?
That's right. Yeah. We like to focus on two things, truth and transparency. And I think this country, Bill, is starving and hungry for an evidence-based, reality-based conversation. And as I often say, is let's open the books together and find out what's true. Let's find out who's right. Bring your best argument, but we've got to agree about what is actually happening so we can so citizens can make good decisions. We exist to empower citizens to hold government accountable, because it's ultimately, it's not the government's money, it's our money, it's your money. And we're trying to facilitate and encourage good citizen engagement.
Well, exactly. It's critical. I mean, this is a government of for, by, we the people. You take we the people out and you don't have federalism. You don't have a government that reflects the Constitution. A couple of years ago, John, OTB said we're on the brink of a transparency revolution. And that has been the case. I mean, over particularly the last couple of years, I think certainly all the great work you guys have been doing for 2 decades plus now, and Elon Musk coming on the scene, all the reveals that are happening, you see what's going on in Minnesota, and everything that your gut has told you was could possibly be. It seems more and more that it's got to be a duck, because it looks like, talks like, and smells like, right?
That's right. Yeah, and it's important. Let's try to start on a hopeful note, because there's a lot. There's a lot of waste. There's a lot of fraud. There's a lot of inefficiency. And people are right to be shocked and outraged and angry. And I think that unsettledness, Bill, is a good thing in your spirit to hold on to. And it's just, how do we take that sense that something's not right and make sure that we make things as right as we can? And that's what we're trying to do by making the spending transparent. So, but let's look back. So 20, as we've talked about before, 20 years ago, Tom Coburn and Barack Obama, very different senators. I was working for Gov't. We worked together to put all federal spending online for the first time. And if we could put our brains, we're old enough to remember 20 years ago pretty clearly, the Google search engine was a big new thing, right? It was, oh my gosh. All of a sudden, I grew up as a kid reading encyclopedias, and just the fact that an encyclopedia could be online was mind-blowing.
Exactly.
And that was early kind of internet. And then we realized, gosh, if we could put government spending online, that will create an ecosystem of groups, individuals do that in Congress. And that really has happened. So when you go online today, Bill, and you look at, it's not just Open the Books, we're the flagship transparency organization. There are literally thousands of accounts on platforms like X that get all of their data from USA spending. So a lot of the debates we've had this year about, oh my gosh, why is a grant going to this entity in California that's really creating a magnet for illegal immigration, or not spending housing money correctly, or Minnesota? USA spending captures a lot. It doesn't capture all of it. We'll get to the gap. There's a lot of gaps, but and then we see what's happened since then. This year there were real cuts. We stopped subsidizing PBS, for instance. And I'm actually a big supporter of the arts. I've got all my guitars. I love creativity.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah.
God created us to be creative people, but I happen to believe that I don't deserve a subsidy for my guitar collection.
Right,
I should be able to buy my own guitars. It's not your job to buy my guitars. It's my job.
Yes.
And that's how we ought to think about creativity. So, but that one issue in particular was the focus of oversight and transparency for years. And the metaphor I use is transparency cuts through government like water cuts through stone. The flow can seem mundane and unremarkable, but when that flow of water finds a crack, it can wipe away mighty, mighty walls of opposition.
Exactly.
And that's what the founders envisioned when they put transparency into the Constitution. Transparency is a first principle of representative government, and making sure that we, the people, are in the driver's seat, that we're the bus drivers. The center of gravity is with us.
Mhm.
And that's been demonstrated, this year, but needs to be strengthened.
Well, step one is so important. First of all, you've got to identify the problem, right? And so if you're not transparent and you haven't identified the problem, then everything, like all these politicians, and even recently in the Hill, we heard somebody that you would have thought would have been pretty smart. I mean, she was a doctor, and everything, they talk in terms, well, John, you really don't understand because there's a lot of nuance here. No, no,
Yeah,
there's not nuance. It either is or it isn't.
exactly. Yes,
It's
yes.
only nuance so that you can skirt accountability.
Right, right. Yeah, so let's talk about the Minnesota example for
Mhm.
instance. It's a great example. So, but most of you, if you haven't watch the Nick Shirley video, watch it. It's got millions of views, and deservedly so. So it's a beautiful example of citizen journalism and this kind of crowdsource oversight that we've been talking about and facilitating for years. So what we're trying to do is we're adding to that investigation. So we've just published. You can go to our Substack. All of the money flowing to daycares all over the country. We're starting with the 10 most populous states.
Right.
But when you read about the fact checking on Nick Shirley, there's very little substance. It's all they're accusing him of being too political, or one of his sources ran for public office. He didn't disclose that. It's like, well, I don't care who ran for what office. I care about, to your point, what is real, what is true.
Mhm.
Are these centers, the quote Leering Center, the
Yeah.
learning drop the N, is
Yeah.
that real or not? Are there kids involved? Do they have anyone actually using these programs, or is it just a fraudulent scheme? And I think in Minnesota, a lot of it is pure fraud. And so we're going to be following that up and retracing his steps, but also looking all over the country. And
Mhm.
I would encourage all of your listeners, go to our Substack. If you live in any of these big states, we've published lists. So go knock on doors. Go, call the entity and find out.
Go do some citizen
And go,
journalism.
go write like we'll pay you. Like we'll pay you as a contributor to write pieces and publish it. And that's again, that's the beauty of what technology can do, is that we don't have to wait on the mainstream media to do it for us. We
Right.
can do it ourselves. And your show's
Well,
a part of that.
Well,
Yeah.
clearly, the mainstream media has checked out. I mean, professional journalism at the level when you and I were growing up, it's lost its way. And it's really violating what our founding fathers expected out of a free and independent press in terms of holding our government accountable. I mean, they ought to be embarrassed that somebody like Nick Shirley can come out and expose something like this. And boy, I'll tell you, did he hit the mother load? Because like you said, when you pull that thread, you're saying, well, it's Minneapolis today, but how many other states are running a similar scam?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think one of the things that's really unfortunate about this, the whole digital revolution, and the dawn of the internet is as significant as when the printing press came on 600 years ago. So it's a massive technological change.
Mhm.
And we've seen the decline of investigative journalism, not just nationally, but locally. That's one of the great tragedies, really, that we've seen unfold, is that you don't have the local newspaper, you don't have the local beat reporter who's able to go and work and beat Nick Shirley to the punch.
Mhm.
And so we're actually working to reconstitute that too. There are other foundations, other entities that are trying to revitalize and rebuild local journalism, and it's sort of this non-agenda based, where
Mhm.
let's just give people the facts, give people the transparent information, and trust people to use their brain. Trust them.
Yeah,
You don't have
right.
to beat them over the head or come with this, you have an axe to grind. Just
Mhm.
make the data available and trust the electorate to make good decisions about where they want their money going. But they've got to
Mhm.
have the information.
Right,
And
exactly.
that's so essential.
Information is key. We're talking with
And
John Hart.
when the media. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're talking with John Hart, the CEO of OpenTheBooks.com, and kind of doing a review here a little bit, and then we're going to talk about what's going forward and what we can expect in this coming year. But as we started out talking about this transparency revolution that's been taking place here, and in this information age, so it's amazing, John, how all these tools are being utilized and how it really is empowering the people. And I think it's scaring and rightfully so, the traditional politicians who've been able to get away with this. Because one of the big questions recently I've been posing to economists time and again is saying, here we are, $38 trillion in debt. How much of that debt is tied to voter fraud and electioneering? And they said probably all of it.
Yeah. Well, look, there's an incredible amount of fraud in the government, and we've got to look at all of our systems, and so that's certainly one of them. And just to kind of close the loop on the Minnesota example,
Mm-hmm.
there are a couple of things that really went wrong that are unique to Minnesota that we don't want to see duplicated. One is that the Biden administration issued a ruling where they tagged funding to quote enrollment numbers, not actual attendance. And so what that did is it incentivized people to just have fake enrollment numbers
Right.
to get money. And that's one of these things that's relatively easy to correct. But then the second thing Minnesota did that was not smart is they got rid of their treasurer office. So I'm on the board of a group called the State Financial Officers Foundation. I'm on a
Right.
kudos to the CEO of that group, my friend OJ Oleka, did a great op-ed in the Wall Street Journal describing how Minnesota was a penny wise and a pound foolish because they eliminated their state treasurer office. And the purpose of that office is to make sure things like this don't happen, to have an internal check. And Open the Books works, hand in glove with a lot of treasurers around the country to
Mm-hmm.
help them publicize their data to make sure that they have the right systems in place. We did pioneering work with, Josh Mandel in Ohio years ago. And they've really they've followed our lead in terms of setting the standard of putting government spending online.
Mm-hmm.
So Minnesota did a couple of things really bad that hopefully will not be replicated. But I think fraud, the big picture point I'll leave you with on Minnesota is fraud is a feature. It's not a bug in our system.
Yeah.
In other words, fraud, this isn't just one anomaly that happened in Minnesota. Yes, there were unique things about it, but when you have a government that is really set up to reward perverse incentives, you're going to see all kinds of misbehavior. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why, again, we need to go back to the founders and have a 21st century federalism, which is really
Mm-hmm.
go back to the enumerated powers. Instead of having 400 agencies, let's have 4 and maybe 5.
Right. Yeah.
And go back to
That are accountable.
Right.
And accountable to the voters. The other thing too, not big surprise here that Biden would do this because it reminds me of what Barack Obama did with Obamacare. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't about providing health. It was just about a number. And so
Mm-hmm.
you get what you ask for. And the people were rewarded for just putting people on the dole,
Mm-hmm.
whether they were legit or not, or legal or not.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah, and Bill, one of the things, highlights of kind of last year is I was able to testify a couple times on the Hill.
Mhm.
One was the House DOGE committee. We talked about all the federal funding that goes to furnish vacant buildings. That was a fun hearing. Millions of dollars going to paintings and conference tables and solar powered picnic tables and all these things.
Mhm.
But then I just testified before the Senate Small Business Committee on fraud within the small business sector. And one of the things we see over and over again is that the best way to make something expensive is for government to make it affordable. So when you have governments, whatever government subsidizes, it gets more expensive. And to your
Of
point
course.
on Obamacare, that's one of the biggest expenses for small businesses is all of the healthcare costs have gone way, way up because the government has gotten between the purchaser of healthcare and the product and the doctor. Government is really the middleman, and it's encouraged health insurance companies to be the middleman between the patient and the doctor.
Yeah. And like you said, this isn't an exception. I mean, this is a feature of government intrusion, whether we're talking, well, let's go ahead and subsidize electric vehicles. We're going to give the consumer $7,000 to go out and buy an electrical vehicle. So what did the dealers do? They said, well, you can't have all
Sure.
that money. So they upped their
Yeah,
price. So it was a
exactly.
windfall profit for these dealers. I mean, it's just, you know,
Education, tuition, right? Same principle.
right, exactly. So, they've got this system down. So wherever the government money goes, well, then they're going to find a way to capture it. And it's, part human nature. And like you said, it's a feature of the system. So that means the system is broken. So is there any interest on Capitol Hill to fix it?
Yeah, I think that, the Minnesota case, Bill, I think is encouraging. It's obviously a discouraging case. It's shocking and terrible, but it's one of these rare moments that's a galvanizing moment. And
Hmm.
like we remember the early days of the Tea Party. We were trying to foment and encourage a citizen-led kind of revolt against big
Hmm.
government, and that succeeded. And we actually moved the needle. We got a
Right.
number of reforms. We got rid of earmarks for a decade. We cut spending in real terms for the first time since the end of the Korean War. And this Minnesota case has that feel of the start of something very
Hmm.
encouraging, the start
Right.
of something promising where people are fed up, but they're fed up in a very constructive way. It
Hmm.
isn't just burn the country down. It's, hey, how do we renovate? And that's really what's so wonderful about our American experiment is our American Revolution was not nihilistic. The French
Hmm.
Revolution was
Right.
nihilistic.
Right. Exactly.
And ours is about, hey, let's continually reimagine, rebuild, renovate.
Hmm.
Sometimes you do have to get the sledgehammer out and knock down a wall that never should have been built to get back to the original vision. But the
Yeah.
end purpose is about creating something. It isn't about tearing things down. It's about creating opportunities for growth and flourishing.
Well, like you talked and you referenced burning things down. Of course, Minnesota's become famous for burning things down
That's
because
right.
it seems to be a deflection,
Yeah.
of what we're really dealing with. And so, our caution to we the people is, hey, keep
Mhm.
your eye on the ball. Don't get
Yeah.
distracted by what the media or these other interests are doing. See, but
Mhm.
again, if you don't know what vision or what the mission is and that what you're holding on to, you're going to be easily discouraged and dissuaded because there's going to be, as there always is, opposition to get this country back on track. A lot of politicians over the years have talked about, oh, we need to do a better job, but
Mhm.
it's just rhetoric. There's no
Mhm.
substance to it. It's just conversation to get you through an election period.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, and that's why people just have to demand results. And we've seen these again, but we really have seen changes and pivots where
Mhm.
1994 is a great example. The Tom Coburn, who I worked for years, he was a member of the class of 1994. I was still in college, but then worked for him 3 years later and started with him in 97. Wrote
Yeah.
this book, Breach of Trust, with him, 20 years ago. That he had a great, service in the Senate. But he was a person that had a normal career.
Hmm.
He
Yes.
coming to Congress is really a demotion because he had a very thriving medical practice. He was a business owner,
Right.
but he believed he was a true citizen legislator. And I think there are thousands of Tom Coburns out there, people that have done things in the real world. They might be a welder, a teacher, a pastor, a carpenter, plumber, somebody that has, or a banker, whatever field they're in, they have something to contribute. So
Right.
I think the doors of public service are wide open and more open than people realize because the perception is that there's an establishment in Washington. It's sort of and there is self-protection where
Hmm.
Republicans protect themselves, but at the same time, anyone can run for office and win. And whether people love or hate Donald Trump, well, he certainly proved that anyone who decides to run for office can win. And that's an incredible strength of our system
Hmm.
that it's amenable to change. That change really can happen. We saw it in 1994, and we saw it with the big Tea Party election in 2010, where
Exactly.
people saw what Obama, to your point earlier on Obamacare, we the people figured it out and realized, we don't really want it out of that, but we did see electoral change. And there's a lot of, we could spend 2 hours on how we need to have better elections, better process, but the fact is that we're in a better spot than oftentimes we think we are. and that
Well,
you know,
I've maintained the voice of we the people needs to be augmented, not throttled down, and that's what happened. You mentioned the Tea Party. Tea movement. Oh gosh, okay, did the establishment and everybody got over it. I mean, influence from the government still in action to this day. It's probably affected, I don't know what, at least a dozen voting cycles. You think about that, John. It's enfranchised the voter. And you can't have that in democracy. You got a lot of people on the left. It's like my first question is, how do you define it? I mean, you can't even define a woman. So let's talk about democracy. Maybe you might be able to come up with a good definition for
yeah.
that, right?
Well,
I would say,
it's not just the IRS scandal
yeah.
where they discriminated against Tea Party conservative groups.
Mhm.
In the Biden years, you had debanking and outright censorship, and so
Yeah,
people should be very, very concerned about ever going back to those days.
exactly. Well, talking with John Hart, he's the executive officer. Well, John, people have been frustrated, like you said. They're seeing what's going on in Minneapolis, and they're sensing. I mean, their gut is telling them that this is just the beginning. Elon Musk said, "Hey, look, I think we could find $1 trillion, maybe even more, if he got some cooperation." But boy, did they freak out! And that's what happens when you turn the lights on in corruption. All the cockroaches start scattering, don't they?
Right. That's right. Yeah, yeah, and it's important. Yeah, let's talk about Doge for a minute, right? Because
Mhm.
Elon Musk came in with Doge, and a lot of people are frustrated that Doge didn't cut more, and I wish they would have cut more, but
Mhm.
but I would just encourage people. You can't when there's an effort to try to cut spending and it doesn't work as well as you think, you can't give up.
Mhm.
And so so Elon, the way I would describe Elon Musk, because it's kind of like if you're a sports fan, if you remember Michael Jordan retired from basketball and he played baseball.
Right.
Oh, Michael Jordan's a brilliant athlete. He's going to be great at baseball. Well, it turns out he's actually much better at basketball. And so Elon Musk, it turned out he wasn't as good at cutting government spending as I wanted him to be, but he's still
Mhm.
great at creating SpaceX. He's still great at Tesla. He still has a lot to contribute to our country, and I think we should thank him for the effort he put in to try to reduce the size and scope of government. But let's learn from what worked. Let's build on those lessons. And in sort of the tech sector, when people talk about when there's like a startup venture that fails, that isn't really failure because that failure is teaching that CEO to do it differently next time. It's teaching everyone in the field to do it differently. And
Mhm.
so in the electorate, same things are true. Like we offered with Coburn thousands of amendments that literally thousands that failed, but
Right.
he didn't give up. Okay, well this approach didn't work. Let's try a
Mhm.
different approach. And then we found the Bridge to Nowhere. We found the Woodstock Museum. We found shrimp on a treadmill, things that are still talked about years and years later.
Mhm.
And so that's what I would just sort of say to Musk and people that are mad that Doge didn't do more is like, well, let's just because it doesn't hit the mark immediately doesn't mean the mark isn't because the mark is there. We've got to hit the mark.
Yeah.
And
Right.
let's build on that. And there's a lot of findings that they had that
Mhm.
Congress still needs to act on, and members are looking into all these things.
Well, John, you bring up a good point in talking about the comparison of Michael Jordan. That is that Michael Jordan was gifted and
Hmm.
wired for basketball more than baseball.
Right.
And Elon Musk, by the same comparison, is that I mean you're coming into a new venue here altogether that you don't think like politicians. I mean you think like
Hmm.
a businessman. Donald Trump thinks like a businessman. Got a problem? Fix it. It's a
Yeah.
15-minute problem. Well,
And you don't get fired. Yeah.
yeah, easy. Capitol Hill. No, that's
Hmm.
that can be an entire campaign and years
Hmm.
long. But meanwhile, you've got all kinds of wasted money, people injured in the process, and again, this all yields to what you referenced earlier, and that's the size of government. It's way too cumbersome and inefficient.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think what we were able to do successfully is when you find a problem, you have to loiter over the target. Okay,
Mhm.
you got to hover over it and have a combined arms approach: air power, land power, sea power, until the problem is solved. And we kind of learned that the hard way. So there are examples of like Social Security disability where billions of dollars were being defrauded.
Mm.
We identified a few fraudsters. There's a guy named Eric Kahn who was encouraging people to sign up fraudulently for Social Security, disability. He was getting paid millions and millions of dollars. But then we identified him. 60 Minutes did a segment. Apple TV did a documentary about him, and
Mhm.
that saved billions of dollars. But that
Right.
took months and months and months of work of, again, loitering over the target. And this is where Coburn, as a doctor, he was able to use that perspective of, okay, well, the disease isn't cured.
Yes,
I don't
right.
want to treat the symptoms. I want to treat the
Right.
disease and
Right.
find the root cause. And sort of the wisdom of we the people could figure that out. Like people
Mhm.
know, they look at Minnesota and they think, okay, this is not just happening in Minnesota. That
Exactly.
instinct is absolutely right. And we're providing the data to help them move those investigations along.
Well, and like you say, hovering over the target, I mean, how many other targets did DOGE expose that, we've gone on to another,
Right, right.
another thing, maybe we need to revisit some of these areas that DOGE
Absolutely.
exposed and
Yeah.
say, okay, like anything, John, as you know, in business, it's 20% of the problem is going to give you 80% of the yield. So what are the
Mhm.
20% of the problems that we have out there that we can identify that could make 80% difference?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I think a couple of things in particular is they DOGE talked about all the antiquated federal accounting
Records
method,
keeping. Yeah.
record keeping. Yeah, all the retirement records in the mountain up in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Fixing things like that can have an enormous impact. But again, that is such a tedious, time-consuming, thankless. But that kind of work and that kind of rigor makes a huge difference for taxpayers. And so I
Mhm.
hope that they continue to focus on those. And I know members of Congress are looking at that. But I think like all of your listeners, they hear this and think, yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. It's a
Right.
no-brainer.
Right.
And politicians have to trust the wisdom of the crowd. In other words, the wisdom of decent people to realize, hey, this is a tedious task. It's kind of like, pulling weeds in your garden. Well, if you really want to make a difference in your garden, you don't just mow the flower bed. You have to get on your hands and knees and identify
Exactly.
the weeds and separate. You don't want to. Everyone has had the experience where they pull up a weed and they accidentally pull up your tomato plant or tomato something you've spent all this time caring for, and
Right.
that's not a fun
Exactly.
experience. But again, there's no quick fix. There's no magic answer. It's just
Mhm.
people are right to demand and expect office holders to do hard work and to
Yeah.
be tenacious and be disciplined about it.
But it seems like they're not, John. I mean, the question that comes to mind here with my audience is, they go, where's the leadership? I mean,
Hmm.
right now, like him or not, thank God for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, in many ways, is exempling leadership.
Hmm.
And he's met with resistance, and for ego's sake, establishment, call it what you want, the Beltway blues or whatever. They're not quite catching it and saying, look at, right now, I think we have an opportune time. We're on the verge. I think Trump is right on in saying we're on the verge of a true golden age for this country. And the thing is the reverberations are going outside of the country, and it is touching the entire planet, John.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and I think obviously what we're seeing in Iran is a good example of that. I
Right.
think I would encourage anyone to go look at all the images of Iran before the Ayatollahs versus
Yes.
after. Heartbreaking.
Right.
And if that imagine the benefit of that regime falling, what that would
Mhm.
do for our national security budget, what it would do for so many areas that affect our lives every day.
Yeah. Venezuela, the same thing. I mean, these poor
Right,
people.
right.
I mean, not that long ago, John, 3 decades ago, one of the most wealthiest,
Mhm.
countries in the top five, certainly. And now, I mean, inflation through the roof. I mean, we complain at 9%. They were at 1,000% plus. And the poor people were eating out of the back of Maduro's trash trucks.
Right, right. It's heartbreaking, and yeah, and compare that to a country like Poland. Poland
Mhm.
has had explosive growth because they've embraced free market capitalism. And I've
Yeah.
traveled a lot in kind of in Eastern Europe and behind the Iron Curtain. Again, like we remember that transition, and
Right.
it's
Yes.
it's remarkable to see how some countries have really flourished and others have struggled. Poland is one that's a success story, where
Mhm.
they were behind the Iron Curtain, they were under Soviet occupation, and now they've embraced the principles of freedom and innovation and natural rights, and they're doing really, really well. And
Yeah.
compare that to Venezuela, which again just went the opposite direction. And
Right.
hopefully that situation will stabilize and go better. But again, you certainly can't whatever view you have of this of Trump's foreign policy, his willingness to take action, is not in question. And
No,
that could open the door to incredible reform and change.
yeah, without a doubt. You mentioned, what happened in Poland and, great success record there. But I don't hear a success record coming from communism or socialism, unless I'm
Yeah,
missing a headline somewhere.
you're not. Yeah, it's a shared, as Margaret Thatcher said, it's shared misery. And
Yeah.
sadly, our Zoran Mondami in New York did not get that memo, so he's going to make another run at the warmth of collectivism, as he put it. But there isn't a lot of warmth when you try to micromanage a free
Mhm.
society. What you end up doing is punishing the winners and rewarding the losers, and
Well,
that's what we're going to see play out, I have a feeling.
Well, and the problem is the winners have enough money. They're leaving town, billions of dollars going out the door, just like in California. And they're already having a hard time meeting a budget or even reconciling it. And so they're just exacerbating their own problem. We're talking with John Hart, the CEO of OpenTheBooks.com. John, looking back in 2025, what would you say was the biggest accomplishment for Open the Books in exposing something that's just so hugely fraudulent?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many to choose from, and I encourage we have a Substack up, and people can look at that.
Hmm.
There's some highlights. I think we looked at Biden era improper payments, $925 billion. There's a lot of progress in scaling that back. Senator Ernst from Ohio, or Iowa rather, has been a great leader on that.
Hmm.
Um, I think I would kind of put it to tie at two different things. I think there's real movement towards an upgrade of USA spending, this bill that I talked about earlier, where we put all government spending online for the first time.
Hmm.
And we got all kinds of pushback. And people said, "Oh, there's no way the federal agencies will coordinate. That's impossible. It's a fool's errand." But we figured it out, and all of that spending is now searchable. Now the
Hmm.
challenge is it's not going up as fast as it needs to, and there are big gaps within states. So our ambition back 20 years ago wasn't just to pass a law; it was to create a norm and to really change our political culture, to make it an expectation that, of course, government spending should be searchable. Why? What possible reason would you not have to search government spending? And so the
Right.
standard should be real-time transparency. And that's
Hmm.
our tagline, is our mission at Open the Books: every dime online in real time.
Exactly. Hmm.
And we talk about, so what did DOGE accomplish? Well, one of the great things they accomplished is they got access to the Treasury payment system. And I call that the administrative state holy of holies. It's where only
Hmm.
the highest of
Yeah,
governments.
right. Exactly.
And really,
Yeah.
the Treasury payment system is America's checkbook. It's so, Bill, just as you and I have the right to go to our personal account, we should be able to go to the Treasury payment system at any time and see the flow of money.
Mhm.
Because guess what? It's not the government's money; it's our money. It's your
Exactly.
living.
It's our personal
What
account.
possible
What-
reason do we have to not see that? And of course,
Yeah.
there are legitimate national security. We don't need to be publishing the address of someone's CIA safe house and privacy matters. Those are national security privacy. That's an easy exception.
Hmm.
So Congressman Chip Roy introduced a bill to at least give Congress access to that system. And Chip is a great leader in Congress. He's actually running for Attorney General now in Texas.
Hmm.
But I'm working with Chip and other members of the House to do a stronger version of that bill to create real-time transparency for every American citizen, and to make that the standard in federal law. And we want to build on that to do the same thing in all 50 states. So again, one of the issues in Minnesota, as we
Hmm.
talked about, they
Right.
got rid of their treasurer's office, but we could even have a better solution, which is it's good to always have a treasurer office because you need someone
Mhm.
on the ground locally who's
Right.
sniffing around and making sure there's no games being played. But we need to dramatically upgrade our transparency law. So there was real movement towards that in 2025, and we want to accelerate that in 2026. That's probably, if I would just pick one, that's probably one of the great advances of this past year.
Do you think that, and maybe you already do this, and I'm just thinking, off the top of my head, that there should be an award for all these,
Mhm.
these fraudsters and everything that goes
Yeah.
out, and I'm just envisioning a trophy
Mhm.
with the shrimp on a treadmill.
On a treadmill. A shrimp on a treadmill trophy.
Sure,
That's a
yeah,
great, that's
exactly. I
pretty
mean,
good. Yeah.
yeah, from Open the Books. I mean,
Yeah.
here's the big money wasters of 2025 or 2026 or something like that, and
Yeah.
and you don't want to be caught with the shrimp on a treadmill.
That's a very good idea. I think we're going to steal that. And we'll
Well,
give you.
hey, it's yeah, I thought maybe we already
Yeah.
had something like that,
Yeah.
but as
Yeah.
you were talking, I'm thinking that would be awesome. The shrimp on a treadmill trophy. You've been awarded. It's like Rowan Martin's Fickle
Mhm.
Finger of Fate, but this would be. One of those, we
Yeah.
would laugh about it. We'd laugh about it, but it's also a serious issue and help
Yeah.
keep in the front of everybody's mind the seriousness that, this is the wasting of the people's money, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, but one award I will highlight for you, just for your audience, is we have a new Adam Andrzejewski Memorial Scholarship Fund.
Oh,
So
great.
so
Mm,
as just to remind people, so Open the Books, this history is we did the transparency law in 2006. Adam Andrzejewski, wonderful entrepreneur, a public servant in Illinois,
mhm.
took that idea and he very wisely expanded it to capture spending not just at the federal level, but state and local. So that's how Open the Book started. And Tom Coburn was an original advisor. I was an advisor of Open the Books at the very beginning. And Adam ran the organization wonderfully and tragically passed away just over a year ago, which we've talked about a couple times on the show. And so that's why I'm now leading the organization. But we have a
Mm.
new scholarship fund honoring Adam, honoring citizen journalism, and it's a very generous $25,000 scholarship to
Wow.
a current college student or someone incoming who demonstrates a passion for these ideas of transparency and citizen-led journalism. So that's something just for your listeners to be aware. If you're interested, just go to our website. There's a section on the Adam Andrzejewski scholarship, and we'd love to tell you more about that.
Yeah, without a doubt. Wow, well, that's a great deal. And plus, of course, as you know, John, Adam had been on the show regularly. We had him on almost on a monthly basis because we just so believed in what Open the Books was doing, and yeah, it was sad when we lost him, and but to his credit, the organization that he had built was strong enough to carry on and bring you on as the CEO.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Well, I'm trying to do the best I can to honor his legacy because he was doing it not for his benefit, but for the benefit of the public. And
Mhm.
we need more people who understand that the vision is not to grow government agencies, but your agency, and
Right.
your right and ability to pursue happiness on your terms with your resources and talents and gifts.
Well, John, as we're coming to the end of this, and I so appreciate the time, our audience does as well. We're so thankful for all the great work that Open the Books has done. What do you see in this coming year? What is the mission and the objective for Open the Books in 2026?
Well, yeah, Bill, thanks for asking. I think one is back on the real-time transparency. We have a real window of opportunity to advance and dramatically strengthen transparency laws at all levels of government, federal, state, and local. So that's a key priority. Would love your all of your listeners' support. Tell your local local officials that demand the
Mhm.
same view of your tax money as you do your own personal bank account. Because again, it's your government money that they're
Right.
spending. You have the right to understand what's happening with it. And then we have a number of in-depth investigations we're working on. We're gonna look very closely back on the affordability theme. We're going to look at kind of the history of affordability programs in big areas of the economy, like healthcare, education, housing, and really let people see the flow of money and then the
Mhm.
results and let them come to their own conclusions about do you want to see more or less of this?
You're right.
We're going to take a very close look at all areas, the Department of Education, higher education,
Right.
spending on sanctuary cities, how the ICE effort is going. There's a lot to kind of look at and unpack, and we're going to provide the numbers and data for people to make up their own minds about.
John, I'll tell you, we're looking forward to that because, you know, we the people sometimes think that we're becoming a bit cynical here because the way we see the money, being utilized, it seems that, especially with these NGOs, money was going out to these NGOs and then it was coming back into the pockets of politicians.
Right.
And
Right.
this is just exacerbating the fraud and corruption all the more and the misrepresentation of we the people.
That's right. Yeah, I would just kind of end on it again, back on an encouraging note, is that
Yes.
when we the people get engaged and make their voices heard, change does happen. Politicians are terrified of
Yeah,
tech
right.
revolts, truly.
Mhm.
And again, I want to see an enlightened revolt. That's
Mhm.
why what we're doing is so important, is that you can't have accountability without visibility. And if you simply shine a spotlight on these transactions, on these games that get played, like you just described, of taxpayer money going to an NGO, then going back to the politicians, friends, or their own sort of LLC that's running the contract.
Right. Right.
So the more people know that all that's going to get exposed, the less we see of that. So sunshine is a powerful deterrent and
Mhm.
disinfectant. Not just a
Exactly.
disinfectant, it's a deterrent.
Mhm.
And we have the technology, and we're also working a lot on sort of the next generation AI tech tools to help do predictive analytics on government waste and fraud to prevent it from happening. And so
Mhm.
I'm very excited about what the future holds, and we're going to help. The best way people are right to be worried about AI in a surveillance state, but the best way to stop a surveillance state is to create a surveillance citizenry and create super intelligent citizens
Mhm.
and let
Exactly.
them own these tools and control these tools, and
Mhm.
not to delegate authority to some mysterious AI agent, but use that agent to your benefit. Let it be like a shovel in your hand or a
Right.
tractor. That's the future.
Right. Freedom is with the individual. It's not
Hmm.
with the government. They're not the ones to give us that, as clearly stated in our Constitution. It's God given.
You
And
got
we
it.
must exercise in order to maintain a free people and a democratic republic, all that our founders had envisioned for us. And you're exactly right, John. I think talking about ending up on an up note, I mean, we shouldn't be afraid of AI. I think AI is going to go a long way. It's like all other technologies that come a long way. People initially said, oh, well, when you went from the typewriter to word processing, it was going to replace all these people. What did it do? I mean, it created whole new industries. So I think we're at the early exploratory stages of it all. And I think good times are ahead. And I think it's a time to, embrace it, not run away from it, but embrace it. And as you say, utilize it for good, right?
Mhm. You got it. You got it. Yeah, we call it our AI in the Future of Freedom Initiative. So you'll be hearing more about that this year.
Well titled. Well, John Hart, the Chief Executive Officer for OpenTheBooks.com, thank you as always so much for all the information. John, remind everybody of the website they can go to hear of and be in front of all the
Yeah.
knowing, because knowledge is power, and we need it now more than ever.
Yeah, probably the best starting point is openthebooks.substack.com, or you can just go to openthebooks.com and you'll get to the right place. So
John Hart, thank you for being with us. Take care.
thank you, Bill. It's a joy. Appreciate
All
it.
right, you got it. Wow, great stuff here, huh? I'll tell you, we're so thankful for John Hart and Open the Books and the team there. They're doing such a great job on behalf of we the people. Make sure you go to the website, openthebooks.com, to be in the flow of the know, as we say. Well, that's a wrap for us. Thank you for sharing a part of your day with us. God bless you. May God bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you. May he be gracious unto you and give you peace. God bless.